listening to Sports Radio Detroit.
Welcome to Grave Discussions. I am your host, Barnabas.
And I am Samael. Welcome to a special episode, episode 83, The True Knot, where we will be discussing the brand new movie, the long-awaited Dr. Sleep.
Yeah, almost 40 years.
Holy shit.
I know.
We weren't even alive when The Shining came out, so...
No, but, we have a very high opinion of it, of course, as you guys may have heard in our last episode. If you have not, go check it out, episode 82, All Work and No Play, where we discussed The Shining. But, yeah, Dr. Sleep just came out. There's a lot of interesting stories about it, but we're going to get into all that stuff, including our review, of course, in the main segment. Before we get into all that, as always, we have to start out by giving a shout out to our favorite host network, Sports Radio Detroit.
And you can find Sports Radio Detroit on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Just look up SRD Sports Radio Detroit. That's SRD Sports Radio Detroit. And you can find them at sportsradiodetroit.com.
That's right, fiends. So go check them and all the other awesome shows on the network out. We are going to begin with the horror news as always. So lots of cool developments since our last episode. This first one, probably the biggest one. And although there's not a lot of information yet, it's still pretty exciting. So what's going on, Sam?
So one of my favorite franchises is being brought back from the dead for the next film. It's been well awaited since 2011. That's when Scream 4 came out, and now we have a resurrection of Scream after the TV show and all that stuff. Now we're finally getting a movie. Probably the return of Neve Campbell, David Arquette, and Courtney Arquette. So most likely. Yeah,
I hope so. There really aren't many details about this next film, but there is going to be a new Scream film, and supposedly we're going to see Ghostface back on the big screen where he belongs, in my opinion. The show was cool. I think the first two seasons, even though they had their faults, was like a pretty decent attempt at Scream. But I am excited for a new film. Of course, the one big difference is that Wes Craven, R.I.P., will not be directing this one for the first time ever in the film franchise's history.
Just give it to Eli Roth, man.
You think he could do it?
I think he could do it. If it, Haunt did well, and the Robed Killers were kind of, I think, his little homage to Scream, especially the ghost Mitch.
Yeah.
So I think he has the right mindset to make a movie like this. Eli Roth has made some fantastic films, so I think Eli Roth can pull it off. So unless Blumhouse wants to come and ruin it for us.
Well, no, because this one is being done by Spyglass Media Group.
That's fine.
And they're supposed to be doing the new Hellraiser reboot as well. We kind of heard rumors about this, swirling around a little while ago, but the new movie is confirmed. We'll see who's attached to it. The only thing that we do know, I guess, based on this article at least, is that the original Scream writer, Kevin Williamson, will not be coming back to this film. So,
damn.
That's a little disappointing, but I was thinking about it. Yeah, I think at least if a kind of established horror director or someone with an intimate knowledge of the genre steps into the director spot, I think there's a good chance it'll be successful, because it's always been a meta thing. Even if they do a reboot, it could technically work because it's Scream.
Yeah.
So as long as you have some meta reboot stuff, about the horror genre, which has been circulating nonstop recently, I think that could be all right too. So we'll see once there's more information. We'll let you guys know, of course, but still pretty exciting. The next article also features Guy Pearce. Last week we talked about the Christmas Carol adaptation. Here's a new movie with Guy Pearce that's being called kind of a horror version of Training Day.
Meets The Exorcist.
Yeah. Yeah, basically the Exorcist meets Training Day, being done by Cinestate and Fangoria, and it's going to be called The Seventh Day.
I think it's going to be pretty good. I usually enjoy these like Fangoria movies, so they never really let me down.
Yeah, that's fair. What other stuff have they produced? Like, wasn't Satanic Panic one of them?
Yeah, and I think so was Ghost House. We watched that one.
Yeah. All right, yeah. So I mean, hey, well, you know, it's a horror magazine and stuff. I would hope that they kind of know what they're doing. This one does seem pretty cool, though. The fact that Guy Pearce is in it as the star already is pretty awesome, and it's going to be written and directed by Justin P. Lang. I don't know off the top of my head what else he's done, but maybe those films we mentioned. I'm not sure. I have to check, but yeah, still pretty exciting. I mean, the premise alone: a renowned exorcist teaming up with a rookie priest for his first day of training, and they plunge deeper into hell on earth, etc., etc. So it seems pretty cool. I guess it really depends on what the actual like plot's going to be.
Sounds like Boskin, kind of.
Yeah, kind of. Except at the beginning, we don't really know straight up that or anything that's happening, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it seems pretty cool. I wonder if it's going to have that kind of drama style cinematography and whatnot. But
I like that cinematography.
yeah. I'm just thinking of Training Day right now. Like, what if that was a horror movie, basically?
I'm thinking of some, like, Harry Potter-esque cinematography right now.
Oh, that would be interesting.
That's more so, I guess, for that Christmas Carol movie. That's what it seemed like.
Yeah.
Even, like, the Dracula TV show, that's what it seemed like.
Yeah, kind of. I guess it's just that British touch. Like, I don't know. But I'm still pretty excited about this one. Like I said, it depends exactly what's going on with the story and stuff. Because, at least for me, like, the exorcism movies, I don't know, recently have just kind of taken me out of it a little bit.
Yeah, there's way too many of them, and it's like the same cliche thing.
Yeah.
Oh no, we're possessed. Let's call a priest. The priest, I can't do it. Fine, let's get a guy who's not a priest, but he's a badass, and he kind of used to be a priest or something, like Curse of La Llorona, and like, I don't know, all these ghost house and possession movies, like, I'm just so sick of them. Like, I like The Conjuring, I like The Possession, I like Insidious.
Yeah.
I like the newer Amityville that came out a few years back too. Surprisingly, I didn't think I was gonna like it, but like they're just such a pain to like sit through. Like,
yeah, I agree, dude. I mean, yeah, there are a handful of like standouts, but for the most part, they're all pretty much the same. Like, I've seen so many of them recently. Most of them have just felt so similar to me to the point where I'm just like over watching it like halfway through the movie, you know, because I can kind of like just call what's gonna happen. So
not gonna lie, I'm over possession movies, and I've been over zombie movies since The Walking Dead.
That's fair. So yeah, it'll really depend on if this one has that ability to be unique, I think. But still pretty cool concept and a cool announcement. Stay tuned for more info on that one. This last article here is about Tremors 7. Yes, 7 fucking Tremors movies. I didn't watch the last one that came out, which was like the ice one or whatever, but I watched the first 5. Yeah, I mean, you know, after the first one, they really kind of declined in quality, but the fact that Burt Gummer keeps coming back and doing his thing is pretty cool. The big news about Tremors 7 is that Richard Brake from 3 from Hell and Devil's Rejects fame is going to be co-starring in this along with
Napoleon Dynamite himself.
Yeah, John Heder. Which, I mean, you know, everyone knows him as Napoleon Dynamite, but he's done some more serious roles, and he's actually a pretty good actor. So I'm interested to see like what his role in this one's going to be. Tremors has kind of become a horror comedy franchise, sort of. You know, like there's a big emphasis on the humor, so I think he can fit in.
Why not an 8-legged freak sequel? Let's do that. We need David Arquette, though.
That would be actually awesome. Because low-key, I love that movie.
Yeah, I know.
It's just a lot of fun, so that would be cool. Yeah, but hey, Tremors 7. Be excited.
Oh my god.
I guess they're going to be like, what do they call graboids or whatever?
I think so.
And they're going to be on like an island or something now. That's like the big thing with this movie.
Honestly, I watched the first 3.
Mm-hmm.
Me and Alir, when we were kids, like we got through 1, 2, and 3, and after that we were just like, yo man, fuck these movies. Like,
yeah, they're all kind of roughly similar. Now it's like each movie basically the one up is, all right, where can we set it this time where it's like a unique location?
New Mexico.
What new I think there was one in New Mexico, if I'm not mistaken. The what kind of like new, worm can we make, and then finally how many more guns and what kind of bigger guns can we put into this movie? So it's kind of become an action thing almost. I don't know. It's interesting. I might check it out, but mainly just for Napoleon Dynamite.
Yeah, mainly.
Honestly. So let's move on to a few trailers here now. We're going to go through these pretty quick, and then we'll get into our review of Dr. Sleep. So the first one actually played at the Dr. Sleep showing in the previews. It's called Fantasy Island.
Yeah, so a bunch of people go to this island, and then they're like, oh, this island will create your fantasy or whatever. And then it goes overboard, and people have fucked up fantasies where they want to torture high school bullies, and other people wanted to fight in a war or whatever. And then there's like swamp people coming out and grabbing people, and it's batshit.
Yeah, it looks pretty wild. And if any of that sounds familiar to you, it's because this is actually a film adaptation of a series that came out in like the late 70s, early 80s, I believe, if I recall correctly. And that, to my knowledge, was not like super horror heavy, but it kind of had a similar premise. It was more of like a drama thing. But, it was a series, so it was episode by episode, and each episode had like guest stars or something like that. This one has a much more serious like horror tone. It does look pretty good. I mean, I'm interested to see like what all the fantasies are and how they kind of come about. And mainly I'm just interested in Michael Pena as Mr. Rourke, who is kind of like the enigmatic owner or whatever the fuck of the island.
He knows what's going on.
Yeah. So I just love this guy. I can kind of not really see him that much as a villain just because he played that one fast-talking funny dude in Ant-Man, and he's been in a bunch of stuff in like comedic roles. So I'm kind of interested in that. Otherwise, it looks fairly standard. It's a Blumhouse picture, so it could be hit or miss. But that's Fantasy Islands, coming out February 14th, 2020 in theaters. So if you want to take your boo and go see Fantasy Island, then there you go. The next one is coming out February 28th, 2020. So not too long after Fantasy Island. And this one is the new Invisible Man.
The trailer looks awesome. I felt like if they didn't give the whole movie away, it would have been even better. It would have been cool if the trailer just didn't really explicitly show that the guy faked his death and turned invisible. If they just like...
Well, it does kind of hint at that, or at least say it explicitly, I think, in like the plot synopsis and stuff. So if anybody kind of read anything up about the movie, you kind of get that anyway. I still think it gave a lot away regardless.
Yeah.
Like nothing super serious, like any twists or anything like that, but just showed us so many scenes, so many like violent, action shots and stuff like that. It's like, I don't know. And basically just showed her character development in the entire movie. So that's, I don't know what, that's a whole other discussion. I think horror trailers now at least just give too much away anyway. But yeah, the movie looks pretty good. Like the atmosphere is there. I think the actual premise still holds up. We thought it was interesting before. Now in the trailer, I'm still interested to see like what becomes of this new dynamic between the two and everything like that. So
didn't I call it though? I was like, there's gonna be stuff moving around, and then she's gonna think there's like a spirit, and then later on it's like he's invisible. Like,
yeah, no, I kind of figured, because once it goes to like the modern suburban house environment, that's, I don't know, that's just kind of what happens. But at least this one is kind of unique just because it is an invisible man, and like you said, kind of reminds you of Hollow Man.
yeah.
So I think it's going to have that same kind of vibe. So be on the lookout for the Invisible Man. It looks pretty good. And this last one is the least like horror
That's what I was thinking.
on this episode. But if you're a horror fan, you still might have a childhood kind of love for Scooby-Doo.
We all must.
I mean, it's one of my... I'm wearing a Scooby-Doo t-shirt right now. I do love this series.
Have you watched Return to Zombie Island yet?
Not yet.
You have
but
to watch it,
I
dude.
have to, yeah.
ASAP. I'm telling you, it's so good.
And I just bought the Witch's Curse or whatever.
Oh,
Yeah, so I got a lot of Scooby-Doo catching up to do. But there's a new Scooby-Doo movie coming out May 15th, 2020 in theaters.
When Scooby met Shag. No.
Basically.
It's just called Scoob.
Scoob. Yeah.
Well, gee, Scoob.
And based on the trailer, we're actually going to see not only the never-before-seen kind of origin story where, yeah, Shaggy met Scooby, and we're also going to see, you know, them growing up and investigating the dog apocalypse, it says in the article. Basically, something about Cerberus. So the Scooby-Doo stuff has been kind of doing this thing lately where they kind of embrace the more like supernatural stuff. It's not all just, you know, people and masks and outfits anymore, which I dig. I mean, it's cool. It's fun. You know, it's a kid's thing, so it's fun. But the action looks cool. I mean, I'm not really like 100% sure what the story is based on the trailer yet, but it doesn't really matter. It looks fun. Looks well animated. The voices are good. People are kind of pissed about Matthew Lillard not coming back to voice Shaggy, but I think the guy that they have is fine.
Well, it's a young Shaggy, so obviously they would have someone different.
Yeah. I think it's Will Forte.
It might be this. I don't know if that's the same guy from A Pup Named Scooby-Doo.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I have to check, but I do recognize the actor. I think the voice is fine. The character designs look pretty good too. Well, some people are complaining about Fred not having the ascot. Grow up, you fucking adult children, okay? It's not that serious, but the movie looks fun. I'm excited for it. And it's good that we have another Scooby-Doo movie coming back to the big screen. It's been a long time.
It's been too long, and I'm gonna go see it. I don't care how old I am.
Exactly. Yeah, I feel exactly the same way. So be on the lookout for that one May 15th in theaters. Right now, guys, we're going to take a very brief break to give some other SRD shows the spotlight. So stick around. We'll be back in just a moment with Dr. Sleep.
Do you love pop culture? Discussions about pop culture? Ranking and rating treasured pieces of that shared culture against each other?
I mean, I do think Flea's a good bass player. He does what he does very well. And like I said, he's like a rock star, you know? He's eccentric. What is so funny?
I just didn't know he talked so long about Flea. I didn't know anybody had so many feelings.
I do.
So many
I got
feelings.
Yeah.
Music, movies, television, food, sports, pro wrestling. We are the determination of what is over or underrated across all fields of greater cultural consumption. Subscribe and review on Apple Podcasts and Podbean, or visit us at sportsradiodetroit.com. Over Under Fair, your final word in pop cultural relevance.
All right, Fred, so the people at Sports Radio Detroit want us to cut a promo for Parsons and Slow.
I want them to cut me a check for Parsons and Slow.
Well, I've Googled some keywords, and I'm going to put them here in a promo. So here it goes. Ready, Fred?
Yeah, analytics away.
Parsons and Slow. We have the content consumers crave. Listen to us on iTunes, Spotify, anywhere else that podcasts are available, or we'll kill you. We won't really kill you. Just listen to our podcast, brand new, every Friday on Sports Radio Detroit.
Okay, I'm ready to do the promo.
Oh, that was it.
What are we doing?
We are talking about the sequel to Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, Dr. Sleep.
And from what I hear, unfortunately, money-wise, it's been bombing, but
yeah,
critically, it's been doing fine.
Yeah, I mean, you know, people have mixed opinions about it, as I've seen across the internet so far, but yeah, you're right. Unfortunately, early reports have the movie pretty unsuccessful at the box office, which is pretty surprising considering, you know, it is the sequel to The Shining. It's directed by Mike Flanagan, who's one of the more prolific horror directors in recent memory. You know, after doing Oculus, Hush, Gerald's Game, Haunting of Hill House, etc. But so that's actually kind of what I want to talk about first. But, you know, before that, if you guys are not familiar with Dr. Sleep, as we mentioned, it is the sequel to The Shining, released almost 40 years later, based on the book of the same name by Stephen King. As we know, we talked about it last week, you know, Kubrick's version is pretty significantly different from King's book. So this movie kind of is attempting very ambitiously to blend, Kubrick's The Shining and King's The Shining and Dr. Sleep. So it's a crazy effort, but yeah, not doing it very well. I wanted to discuss that because I'm surprised by it, quite frankly, and I think it's interesting. I think there are a lot of reasons, but why do you think it hasn't done that well?
I think just the IQ of the movie viewers, you know what I mean? The audience.
Sure.
Because let's be real. If Blumhouse releases Paranormal Activity, right off the bat in the first day, it's going to make way more than Dr. Sleep. If they release another Conjuring, just because people like to dick ride, I feel like the word is, like to dick ride these like super Hollywood-ish, stereotypical boo, haunted house, jump scare movies, and they really don't want to take that change in direction and view and like actually watch something that's iconic, really. I mean, I just talked to my plumber, told him we went to go see Dr. Sleep, and he's like, I love that book, this and that. Have you read the book? And he was talking about Abra and stuff like that. So he knew exactly. He says he doesn't want to go see the movie because it might differ from the book. And I think that's another reason, too. People that know the book are kind of scared to go watch it because it's supposed to be a sequel to Kubrick's The Shining. So, I mean, I think it did well. It was well-paced. The score was amazing. The acting was amazing. It was so well-paced, it did not feel like 2.5 hours. I mean, it felt like 2.5 hours, but I wasn't sitting there like, man, now I gotta sit here 2.5 hours. Like, it unfolded perfectly. Like, there was no drawn-out scenes, no nothing. Everything had a purpose. Everything tied in at the end. Everything that you saw earlier in the movie that you had questions about is answered later on, like those psychic vampires and stuff like that. Yeah. So, I mean, I think it did well. I think people are just scared to go see this movie because, one, they're either fans of the book, or two, they're just stereotypical casual horror fans. I think the die-hard horror fans will see it, and that's where it'll make its money from, much like a lot of these like classic horror movies like Slumber Party Massacre and stuff like that. It's the cult following that really does it. It's not really the mainstream appeal. And when you have a movie as cult as The Shining and like a book as cult as Dr. Sleep, you're going to have a really limited variety of people going to go see it, and it's all people who are really diehard fans.
Yeah, I do think, The Shining had that mainstream appeal sure for a long time. I mean, even still in many ways, but to me, out of all the classic horror movies, it does almost feel like kind of niche just because it's an insane film, but I don't know. I think it's pretty popular, but I also think you're right. I feel like probably a lot of people don't know about it or haven't seen it, especially like the more casual crowd. Not to like necessarily shit on them or anything, but still, I also heard people say and read people say that they didn't even know what Dr. Sleep was. I will say that, I mean, The Shining, definitely way more culturally significant, way more popular. It is a brand name. Dr. Sleep, even though it's based on the book, and I think it's still kind of right for the movie to be called Dr. Sleep, due to it being, the sequel and adaptation of the book primarily. But a lot of people said they didn't know what it was. A lot of people don't really read now, and if you don't read and you're not a horror fan or whatever, then you probably don't know shit about Dr. Sleep. So if you see this, you're like, oh, Dr. Sleep, I don't know what the fuck this is. It looks weird though, so I'm probably not going to go see it. And it was kind of being marketed as the sequel to The Shining, but I think the marketing kind of failed too. I didn't see it like everywhere. I didn't see a ton of advertising or as much as I wanted.
I think the problem was it not being advertised explicitly as The Shining sequel. We see clips, like moments of The Shining in the trailer, and like, the head in the door, but not a lot of people recognize that iconic "Here's Johnny" moment, or the red rum, like, I think for some people, you have to explicitly state that it's a sequel to The Shining. That way, they go back, watch The Shining, and then see this.
Yeah. So, apart from all that stuff, I also heard some other reasons. One being that it was right after Halloween, so maybe people just didn't care enough. I also know that it was Veterans Day weekend, so at least here in the U.S., it's a thing with, certain demographics, certain regions of the country. So maybe that played a factor. And then, to kind of go along with what you were just saying, the trailer at least, and the marketing and stuff, some of it, there was, Shining references and, hey, this is a sequel to The Shining, kind of here and there, but then the rest of it is this like weird news story, so maybe it just didn't really, strike a chord with some people. It didn't really interest some people. So I kind of get it. Even when the book came out, I was like, holy shit, there's a sequel to The Shining, but having never read The Shining, I didn't really have any interest to read the Dr. Sleep book that much. With the movie coming out, is cool, but I can see that kind of being the case for a lot of people too. So probably some mixture of all those factors led to the release basically being like way below average, and hopefully it does well internationally. I haven't checked like those numbers, but I do think it's a shame because I do see this kind of going down as, probably not this, huge success, of course, and probably won't even really be talked about too much in like mainstream media and maybe even mainstream, horror or just movie stuff. But I think it's going to go down as like a respectable, well done follow-up to The Shining, and as an adaptation of the book as well. But putting all those elements together, I think probably will throw some people off too, because people who have read the book, they're going to look at it like, oh well, this is completely different, the ending's different, whatever's different, etc. And so if you're like a diehard, I guess, loyalist to, having everything be perfectly adapted, etc., then you probably won't like it. But you probably didn't like The Shining either in that case. So I don't know, but yeah, probably all those factors. It is a shame. I thought it was enjoyable. It was really different. I think probably a lot of people are going to be thrown off by the fact that The Shining is this like psychological horror, and even though this movie has horror elements in it, it comes off more as like this adventurous dark fantasy, which I like. I thought it was done super well, but I can see how that might throw some people off from even attempting to go watch it. I saw a lot of people just like, I'll just wait for the Blu-ray.
It didn't really throw me off. It definitely had Stephen King vibes. Like, it had It Chapter 2 vibes. Same kind of cinematography as well as the original Shining, as we saw near the ending, had the same cinematography as the beginning of The Shining. Just it was dark and had shit tons of snow and shit. But I felt like it was done well. The pacing was well. The acting was great. Ewan McGregor is a goat. The little girl who played Abra is really good. The psychic vampire ideas were pretty cool, since we had never been introduced to them in The Shining. We were just introduced to the ghosts that wanted the steam from the Shining kids. We never knew about the psychic vampires. And it all tied in together well. And then, going back, mild spoiler alert, to, the hotel and everything, I think was perfect.
Showed in the trailer.
I think it was perfect. So, like, I don't have any gripes with this movie at all. I really don't have anything to bitch about. I usually have a lot of things to say, but not this time.
Yeah. No, I was impressed with many aspects. I mean, I had a few gripes, but overall, I was actually really impressed. Mike Flanagan had this monumental task of blending basically 3 people's work into this movie. So I can see why it might be daunting, might be a little jarring to people. But in the context of like the film itself as a sequel to Kubrick's The Shining, at least, and keeping it Stephen King like, I thought it did a fantastic job. Because to me, not only, so here's the thing, I thought it did this perfectly because it blended the visual style of the first film, which kind of is a Mike Flanagan staple at this point, but it looked filmic. It had that I can't really explain it, but there's some kind of overlay with either the edit or what they shot on or something, and that color palette and the lights looked similar to the 1980 film. It had the crossfades, which I love. I don't know, I just love crossfades, but also for some reason still very indicative of The Shining. It had this similar kind of cinematography, but then whether it's just like a consequence of the story itself, or if it's also what Flanagan did to kind of incorporate everything. This felt way more Stephen King-like to me than The Shining did, for sure.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Especially with the whole focus on like children and like them being like killed, as we see in a lot of Stephen King's. Like,
yeah, there's something to be said about his depiction of children. I mean, they're very common in the books. There's often these like psychic children, so even though it's not like the central focus of The Shining, it is here as Ewan McGregor gets older and meets Abra Stone, who is this very powerful girl with The Shining.
allegedly the most powerful girl with The Shining.
Yeah, and she's being pursued by this group called the True Knot, who are like these psychic sucking vampires of some sort.
It's okay, you can say the V word.
Yeah, there's something that's kind of indicated in the trailer and stuff too, but it's a cool concept. If anything, I like that Stephen King always has a really unique idea to throw at us, and this is a much broader, much weirder narrative than The Shining. Goes outside of the hotel and has this random group that we've never even heard about or anything, but expands so much on like little things that came up in The Shining. So it's very ambitious. It's a big story. It almost kind of reminded me of Bram Stoker's Dracula, because it's this big adventure. It basically goes across the whole US in the movie, which is really cool. And I really enjoyed that. I thought the progression was good. I have heard some criticism that it was boring. I mean, I guess that really just depends on, how you see the film, but
I mean,
it wasn't boring for me.
I have legit ADHD and autism spectrum disorder, so if I can sit down and watch this, your lazy fat ass people can do it too. It's boring. Maybe you don't have the intellectual capacity to understand like a good movie. Like, these motherfuckers are like, this sucks, but then they'll watch something stupid on Netflix, like Murder Party or something stereotypical like Stranger Things, like, this is the greatest thing ever in the world.
I think, some people have differing opinions and feelings about certain things. That's fine. I definitely don't think it was boring. I mean, from a writing standpoint, narrative standpoint, basic storytelling, this fit everything together perfectly. And like I said, we haven't read the books, so I'm not going to comment about that stuff because, some things differ. But in the context of this film and its relation to The Shining, the story, was complete to me. That there weren't really any plot holes. I didn't get hung up on fucking stupid things like people always get hung up on. Like, well, why was Susie wearing a red dress? Does it fucking matter, Tom?
Yeah.
Like, shut up. So I've heard enough of that shit, but there are some legit criticisms. I will say, overall, yeah, I did really enjoy it. I liked the story. I liked the character development for the most part. I actually wasn't like a huge fan of the Abra character, and I'm sure she's fleshed out a bit more in the book because it allows you to kind of do that. But in the movie, I didn't care that much about her as the character. Honestly, the only person I really cared about was Danny.
Yeah, me too.
Which is fair, but her story kind of overtakes his, and he's kind of like this auxiliary piece to her story, but it's still kind of about him. That's the only place where it kind of lost me, but I was still intrigued enough with what was happening to like not really care about that. But I think that's one of my main criticisms, and probably the reason why it's not like a 5 out of 5 movie for me. But overall, I really liked it. Yeah, we could talk about the actors, the recasting. I thought that was actually great.
That was pretty good. The chick from Starry Eyes played Shelley Duvall's character.
Yeah, Wendy. Yep.
And I didn't like the Jack Torrance stand-in.
Yeah, you know what? Here's what I'll say. It's
not enough scruff. That's my only problem.
So he's played by Henry Thomas, who I've seen in other stuff. I think he's a good actor. I don't know. Like, the faces were obviously different. I'll say that much. And I think he actually got most of like the kind of body language and mannerisms of Jack Nicholson's Jack Torrance down pretty well. Huge props to like the makeup and hair and wardrobe departments.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think they fucking nailed it.
They nailed it for all the characters.
Yeah. Like the look, when you don't see their face, the look is pretty much perfect.
At the beginning, I
know?
couldn't tell that wasn't the original Danny riding on the tricycle.
Yeah.
Until we got like that zoom in of his face.
Yeah. No, it was great. Yeah, I saw his face and I was like, all right, that's obviously not the original kid. But they're all still pretty good. They got the mannerisms and they got kind of like the vocal, inflections and just the way that they talk down pretty well. So props to them for that at least. But yeah, I think that these were kind of supposed to harken back to Kubrick's film, but also kind of, play on like how King originally wrote these characters to be, more or less. But I thought they did a good job with that. I didn't mind it. I thought I was going to hate that they recast everybody, but I really didn't. The guy who played Dick Halloran, Carl Lumbly, was actually probably my favorite recasting.
Me too. That was my favorite, hands down.
Yeah, he did really
Though
well.
Shelley was a second. Shelley's recast.
She was really good. I mean, the kid who played Danny was okay, but it's a kid actor, so, you can't really expect, like, pitch perfect, but everyone was pretty much, good. So I liked that aspect a lot. And, I mean, what else can we really touch on? Overall, like I said, I enjoyed it in the context of it as the film itself, as a sequel to The Shining. I thought it made total sense. I understood why the decisions that were made. So everything kind of fit together pretty nicely. Great production design. I can tell that Mike Flanagan really wanted to make something respectful to everybody's, kind of creativity and work. So, yeah, I really appreciate it for that.
I do too, honestly. For me, what really did it was just the story. I felt like the story was like a notch above other sequels, because look at it. The first one was, oh no, Pennywise, and the second one was, oh no, Pennywise is back. The first one was like, oh no, the hotel, oh no, my dad, and then it's like, oh no, psychic vampires kidnapping Shining kids and stealing their souls and killing them, and how are we gonna solve this? Oh, there's this like god of the Shining and she's a kid. And then Danny comes back, and then how's Danny going to fit into this? And how's Danny going to use the plot from the previous movie to fit into this movie? When's that going to come into play? And it all comes into play. That's the best part about it.
It does,
everything
yeah.
comes into play. And everything ties together. Every last thing from the first movie to the last moment of this movie is relevant to both movies.
Exactly, yeah. Everything kind of comes full circle and
Exactly.
and corresponds. We see really great character development of Danny Torrance, utilizing everything remember that one, I won't really say too much about this, but he made like a speech, that one speech that he made about his dad at the meeting.
At the meeting, yeah.
That was very good, awesome performance, made sense. I mean, we can attribute, everything that happened as a kid with his father to who he is now, kind of. And he wants to overcome that. He kind of ended up like his father, but he doesn't want to be. He wants to be good.
I felt that he overcame the trauma by accepting and still like seeing, like being reflective of himself in terms of being his own father, because he didn't get to know him, so he had to drink to get to know him.
Yeah.
But he still says he did it for Jack, and like, even though his dad tried to kill him, you see like the maturity in him, because he still doesn't blame his father. He doesn't hate his father, even though his dad was a dick. Like he didn't blame him. Like he knew life can be tough on people. He knew what alcohol can do to people, and that was still his dad in the end. So even though like, he was crazy and tried to kill him in the first one, like he is still like very similar to his dad, and like he does not like seem to hold a grudge against his dad. And that's the change in character. That's the difference between being an 8-year-old and being like a 38-year-old, like that's that level of maturity, that forgiveness. And I mean, when you realize someone has a psychological disorder, let's say like a mental patient escapes and he kills someone, like people are like, she needs to die, but it's like, sure, he killed them and it may sound fucked up, but it's not his fault. He was wired like that. And once you can like realize stuff like that these alcoholics, like they were just wired to be habitual and, addicted to these substances and just angry, like you kind of really can't get mad, because that's just biological wiring, man. That's just how it is. I mean, I think it takes more of a level of understanding and empathy and logic, really. If you look at it purely from a logical and empathetic, that's how we have to look at things, not logical and judgmental. And that's what Danny did, and that's why he was able to overcome the demons that his father couldn't. So his father passed the same demons, quote unquote, these genetic traits for addiction down to his son. And while he did struggle with it most of his life, he eventually overcame that, showed that, like, look, we may have these things that make you habitually addicted to things and make you angry and make you a dick, but it's not who you are. It's just something you have, you know?
Yeah. No, I agree completely. And, you know, that shows how The Shining, even though it wasn't explicit and all that stuff, really had that depth, and how this movie used it so well to develop the character and the story, and gave us these really cool moments of him kind of conquering his demons. But also an important thing was the emphasis on how there are these, you know, energy sucking evil places in the world. It's a very common theme with Kings, and it's something that, you know, when it was exposed to Jack and his prior violence and his alcoholism and his anger and everything, pushed him over the edge. And now we see that with the hotel too, but also with, you know, something that King loves doing is just exploring these places and these people or creatures that kind of do the same thing. So we get introduced to the True Knot, and then, you know, we kind of get more of that lore, more of that world, and, you know, it kind of gives us an outside force now to kind of hate, because, you know, we know that, like the Overlook Hotel, they're evil and they're pushing people and killing people and everything.
I wouldn't say evil. I would say like parasitic.
Yeah.
You know, because they were like parasites. They couldn't live without taking the life force from something else. And then, once again, I'd like to point out, kind of not their fault.
Right, yeah. No, it's kind of like
Just
a moral
how it
gray
is.
thing, that it's how they survive.
It's like a,
You know?
I don't know, to me it's like a pecking order.
Yeah.
And it's really Darwinism kind of, and like, but it's kind of showing us that Shining is kind of that force that helps empathize, that help us solve things. So when outside forces like the psychic vampires come and all this stuff, you still have this Shining to like guide you, at least, to help you make the right decision, to help you overcome stuff that's, you know, on a different part of the hierarchy than you.
On the very like surface, as like a nerdy thing, I kind of like comparing it to like the Force versus, well, not the Force. The Force is one thing, but like the Jedi
And the Sith
versus the Sith, yeah, just and how they use the Force against each other, kind of weirdly similar.
So then what would
this.
the hotel be?
The hotel is the Death Star. I don't know.
I think the hotel would be the Sith.
I mean,
you know, Danny would be the Rebel Alliance.
I think it's like the collective thing of like this random evil, because from our perspective, we have to kind of, you know, see them as evil because they kill children and do all this, even though yes, it is for survival, but obviously it goes much deeper than that. And I like that, you know, it doesn't really go super deep about it, and this movie doesn't hold your hand and give you all this exposition and stuff, so it kind of leads you to have to think about things like that for yourself. But yeah, I don't really want to say too much more about it, but I did like this movie a lot. I think some of those things, like with Abra and stuff like that, in my opinion, could have been tightened up a little bit more, maybe fleshed out a little bit more. It was already a long movie, but, you know, those would be my gripes. Still a really good movie. I don't know where it lands in my top 10 yet, but I really enjoyed it. Yeah,
it's in my top 3 for sure. It's really between this, Midsummer, and The Lighthouse.
And Us. Did you like that stuff?
Us is up there too, but then like Haunt has to be up there too, because I really liked Haunt and Candy Corn. So those are, I just revealed maybe my top 10 right there.
It's going to be an interesting end of the year list, I think, for sure. But I think it's going to wrap up the Dr. Sleep review. We both really liked it. Not doing super well at the box office. We saw it in the MJR Epic experience, so kind of like the IMAX. I recommend you go check it out in the theaters if possible. But any support, I think, will go a long way. They were talking about doing like a sequel and some other stuff. May not get to now. I don't know if they need it. But anyway, that's a whole other thing. But go check out Dr. Sleep if you have not yet, and let us know what you think about it. you can tell us on our social media, Facebook and Instagram, at Grave Discussions, and on Twitter we are gravediscsrd, and you can also check out gravediscussions.net for the latest episode archives, host bios, and much, much more.
And until next week, boils and ghouls, we're heading back to the crypt, and we will see you on Grave Discussions.
This has been an SRD production.